15 engineers failed for 6 months until his nanny discovered the solution in just 30 seconds. Max stared blankly at his computer screen, the bright glow illuminating the rapid rate of his racing thoughts. How had they come to this? 15 of the smartest engineers in Silicon Valley, trapped in a cycle of failed ideas and impending deadlines. A pit of anxiety churned in his stomach. He clenched his hands, reminding himself of the sacrifices his parents made, the long nights they toiled to give him this chance. But here he was, lost in a sea of prestige seekers, watching his dreams evaporate alongside the project's credibility. He glanced up from his desk, catching sight of his team. They huddled together, whispering animatedly, furrowed brows revealing their frustration. If he were to speak up, to even suggest his simple solution rooted in the very principles of energy conservation, it would be the end of his time here. The fear of ridicule clawed at his insides. Would they look at him as a fool, just another dreamer who didn't understand the complexities of their elite world? Max slumped back in his chair, his mind heavy with doubt. 6 months of grueling work had led nowhere. He felt like a spectator in his own life, stripped of the ambition that had brought him to this point. It was all unraveling, and he feared for his family's hopeful eyes. What if he couldn't rise to the occasion? After another long day, he found comfort in Ruth's presence. She had been with him since childhood, her nurturing spirit embodying resilience and wisdom. They sat together, sharing a modest meal, and Ruth's warm gaze met his, her knowing smile grounding him. "Max," she said softly, cutting through the noise in his head. "What if the solution is simpler than you think?" Her words echoed in his mind like a gentle nudge. What if? Could he really turn this around? He began to scribble notes fervently, embracing the spark she ignited in him. Time passed unnoticed as new ideas flowed. But the moment he dared share them in meetings, the backlash was swift. The eye rolls, the dismissive murmurs had wrapped around him like a vice. Doubt surged again, this time alongside an urgent need for validation. Every idea felt like a battleground, and he stood alone as his peers clamored for recognition. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Returning to his storm of thoughts, he resisted the impulse to abandon his ideas altogether. How could he trust people steeped in complexity when simplicity beckoned? Torn between two worlds, each day solidified his anxiety. The whispers made it clear he was the outlier, and every rejection tightened the noose around his self-worth. But as night encroached, an internal shift took root. He felt Ruth's presence as he shaped his sketches, her stories of resilience wrapping around him, reminding him of the long history of struggles they had both faced. In the depths of his uncertainty, a new resolve crystallized. Yet just as he prepared to stand up for himself, he caught wind of a lavish proposal gaining traction among his colleagues, one that threatened his chances entirely. Max's heart surged with panic. Would he have the courage to push forward, to showcase his vision and risk everything, or would he wither in the shadows, consumed by doubt and fear? As the deadline loomed ominously, he stood at a precipice, faced with the weight of expectation and a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within. What would he choose? The answer hung in the air, heavy with anticipation and trembling uncertainty. Max's heart pounded in his chest as he stared at the looming deadlines. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to failure, amplifying the pressure weighing on him. The generosity of Ruth's encouragement lingered, but against the backdrop of rejection, it felt tenuous. He paced the small confines of his apartment, inhaling deeply, trying to capture that fleeting spark of courage. He replayed Ruth's words in his mind, visualizing a path forward, yet the vivid clarity he felt was often muddied by trepidation. How could he unveil his simple solution amidst a crowd of prestigious opinions? Would they embrace his vision, or would they bury it beneath derision? The next day at work, a confrontation with the looming proposal became inevitable. Max's colleagues buzzed with excitement over the project that had commandeered attention and resources. As he stepped into the conference room, their murmurs faded momentarily. He pushed his shoulders back, preparing for the inevitable attack on his ideas. But this time was different. The urge to hide flickered away and, fueled by Ruth's unwavering support, he felt a different kind of determination swell within him. Taking a deep breath, he presented his sketches with a newfound assurance. "I know I'm the least experienced here," he began, locking eyes with his peers, "but I believe we can simplify our approach. Harnessing energy conservation principles could dramatically enhance our design." Unsurprisingly, the atmosphere tensed. They exchanged looks, some sympathetic, but most scornful. One of the lead engineers, Derek, a titan of the industry, leaned back in his chair with a dismissive smirk. "And why would we take advice from someone who hasn't climbed the right mountains?" Max's cheeks flushed hot, but he pressed on. "Because sometimes the answer is hidden in plain sight." The laughter that erupted failed to drown out the internal scream of rejection laced with determination. He'd expected this response, yet he felt a flicker ignite in his gut. Their laughter no longer felt like mockery, instead, it fueled his desire to prove them wrong. He would not retreat. After that meeting, he took refuge at Ruth's kitchen table, the familiar scent of home comforting his unease. "They don't see what I see," he confessed. "It's like I'm screaming and they're deaf." Ruth studied him, her eyes penetrating his thoughts. "You have insight they lack," she replied steadily. "You can see the strength and simplicity because you haven't been entangled by arrogance." Those words lingered as he strategized his next move. The resistance he faced was a crucible, refining his ideas and pushing him toward clarity. He started looking for allies, unassuming engineers who valued fresh perspectives over prestige. He found a few, including Tara, whose curiosity matched his fervor. They connected over coffee, strategizing a way to present his ideas in a way that would resonate with the broader team. Weeks rolled by as Max studied his teammates, learning their strengths and biases. He mapped out a plan, meticulously crafting a presentation that not only highlighted his design but demonstrated how it intertwined with their lofty aspirations. The day of the all-important meeting arrived, and the tension in the air was palpable. Max stood at the front, flanked by Tara, who had committed her support to him. He realized that this time, he wasn't just an outcast, he was part of a collective voice advocating for change. However, as he began his presentation, Derek's skeptical face loomed larger. Deep down, Max felt the familiar pang of doubt claw at him again. Could he truly turn the tide against the entrenched hierarchy? When he wrapped up, he opened the floor for discussion, feeling an impending sense of dread. Just as he began to unravel the arguments that Derek had rehearsed, the unexpected happened. One of the engineers, a quiet but avid listener, spoke up in defense of Max's views. The atmosphere suddenly shifted. Max's breath hitched as fresh momentum sparked in the room. As if driven by necessity, he sensed that this was the pivotal moment. This was his chance to catalyze change, to assert his vision once and for all. But just when Max felt the swell of hope, Derek interjected sharply again, wielding his authority to sidetrack the narrative. The battle was far from over, and Max needed to confront the growing tension head-on. Would he back down, or would he stand firm and challenge the very foundations of their professional dynamic? As the debate intensified, Max grasped that his journey was not merely about innovation, it was about asserting his place within this dynamic world. The outcome hung in the balance, making it clear that the true test of his character was only just beginning. Max's pulse quickened as he faced Derek's unyielding critique. The conference room, filled with his colleagues, felt more like a battleground than a collaborative space. This moment, teetering on the edge of transformation or total collapse, left his ambitions hanging precariously. He could retreat or stand tall amidst Derek's towering skepticism. The choice was his to make. "Let us address your concerns directly, Derek," Max said, his voice fine-tuned with resolve. Instead of shying away from Derek's challenge, he leaned into it, letting his confidence rise as the conversation unfolded. "You're right about the complexities we're dealing with, but simplifying our approach offers the clarity we need to progress. It allows us to innovate effectively." The room was still. Colleagues exchanged glances, the initial laughter replaced by an awkward silence. Max could almost see the wheels turning in their minds. Was there any merit to his proposal? He sensed the slight shift in their energy, a transformation he had once deemed impossible. Derek, sensing a change, leaned forward, his critiquing armor still firmly in place. "And how exactly do you plan to implement this simplicity?" It's all well and good to say we should simplify, but what does that even look like in practice? Exactly the fear I anticipated, Max shot back, a strategic spark igniting within him. He gestured to Tara, who nodded affirmatively, ready to back him up with data they had meticulously prepared over the last few weeks. We outlined a phased approach. First, we utilize our existing resources to prototype a smaller version of the design. We assess its performance and iterate based on concrete feedback. Iteration over speculation. Suddenly, even amidst the tension, Max felt a weight lift. It was as if he had aligned pieces in a puzzle he had been scanning for months. Commitment and collaboration, those were the tools at his disposal, and now he had laid out the blueprint to exploit them. Derek hesitated, taken aback by this unexpected depth in Max's strategy. Seizing the moment, Max strode towards the whiteboard, sketching a simple flowchart, the same routine he'd practiced countless times alone in front of the mirror. Here's the structure I envision. Each step builds directly from the last. It's intuitive, and it minimizes risk. Max watched as the engineers leaned in, curious responses replacing their former skepticism. The room was buzzing softly now, the initial doubts waning as others chimed in, nodding along with newfound understanding. It was invigorating and terrifying, with Tara's support bolstering his newfound momentum. They addressed every question, each inquiry transforming from an attack into a trial by fire, sharpening Max's resolve. He realized that resistance was educating him, not simply opposing him. But just as he began to bask in the warmth of emerging camaraderie, Derek interjected once more, this time with a hypercritical edge. Simplicity is appealing, but can you guarantee it will yield results? We need to remember, we had engineers with years of experience on this, and they failed. The collective tone in the room shifted again. Doubt lingered like a shadow, creeping back into their ranks. Max's heart raced anew as he faced a realization that felt simultaneously exhilarating and overwhelming. He was not only defending his proposals, he was questioning his worth, even in the face of growing support. Derek, failure is part of our learning curve, Max replied, his voice steady. Look at my perspective, sometimes, the simplest ideas bear the most relevance. They may feel rudimentary, but they harness the power we overlooked. The solution is often insidious, hiding beneath layers of complexity. The discussion escalated as Derek's skepticism met Max's assertiveness, both entrenched and unwilling to give ground. The room was volatile. Each exchange deepened the conflict, testing Max's resilience and capacity for conviction. Max's mind silently raced through worst-case scenarios, but his resolve tightened like a coil in a machine. He thought of Ruth, of Tara, and of the insight they had unearthed together. Amidst distractions and doubts, clarity reigned supreme. The need for authenticity in his answers outweighed the allure of consensus. Would this be his breaking point or his breakthrough? As he weighed his next words, he knew he was on the precipice of something significant. If he could navigate this conversation, he might not just prove himself within this project, but redefine how he viewed his place in the industry. But even as he steeled himself for the next rebuttal, the stakes shifted again. He sensed the atmosphere building toward a confrontation that could upend everything he had worked for, forcing him to reckon with the deep-seated doubts lurking within him. Had he prepared enough? The moment hung heavily, waiting for him to seize it or let it slip away. Max took a deep breath and readied himself. What came next would determine if his journey of self-discovery would continue down a path of validation or lead him into deeper uncertainty. Max stood at the whiteboard, feeling the tension constricting the air around him. Each challenge fired back his way pushed him deeper into a spiral of self-reflection. He felt like a prizefighter in the ring, each jab from Derek a test of endurance. The room, filled with his colleagues' quizzical expressions, rendered him acutely aware of their expectations. He could either retreat into self-doubt or embrace the challenge head-on. He chose the latter. Derek, Max began, his voice unwavering, guarantees are illusions in our field. But what I can promise is a commitment to learn swiftly, react dynamically to feedback, and most crucially collaborate effectively. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. I'm proposing we divert from what's familiar and venture into the unknown together. It's daunting, but the rewards can redefine our approach. He cast a glance around the room, gauging their reactions. A few engineers nodded, opening themselves to the idea, but he could still sense pockets of skepticism like dark clouds hovering. He pressed his hands against the whiteboard, an unconscious grounding gesture. Let us acknowledge our past failures, he continued, but let us also understand that through those failures, we've gained invaluable insights. Our combined experience is our strength, not our hindrance. As he spoke, Max began to feel the tension transforming, no longer a heavy weight but a pulsing energy igniting his intent. When Derek's gaze remained stony, Max understood that he needed something more than just words. He needed to turn this moment into a pivotal point, a launchpad for his vision. What if we set clear criteria for success? Max proposed boldly. For each stage of our prototype, we create measurable objectives. If we fail, we iterate. If we succeed, we build. This isn't just about my vision, this will be our collaborative mission. Tara's eyes sparkled with encouragement. She was ready to jump in with supporting data, but it was Max's voice that mattered now. As the tensions lingered, he felt a flicker of hope. He could guide this conversation toward professionalism, not antagonism. Every successful innovation stems from iterations of trial and error, he stated, emphasizing his points with a calming cadence. If we're risking something, let us risk clarity, not uncertainty. I envision a culture where we're not afraid to ask questions, to revisit old paths with new eyes, safety and vulnerability. Yet just as his fervor was building momentum, Derek interjected, all this sounds idealistic, Max, but you're glossing over the core issue. What if the team isn't aligned, or worse, what if the clients don't trust a new method? The dismissal sliced sharply through Max's momentum. The murmuring crowd felt thick, and he sensed his own confidence beginning to waver. Had his passion overridden reality? Was he chasing an ideal that bound them in more risk? Max paused, calling upon the whispers of doubt that accompanied him through sleepless nights, doubt about his professional acumen, about whether his ideas would ever manifest into reality. But then, like a moment of clarity washing ashore, he realized, this confrontation, this moment to rally support or retreat into obscurity could carve a new path. Derek, he replied slowly, I respect our clients' needs. That's why our dialogue has to shift. This isn't just a project, it's a partnership. If we can unify our vision internally, we'll present a strengthened front. It's not chaos, it's evolution. But even as he asserted his standpoint, a shadow of trepidation crept back and questions remained. What if they resisted this push for transformation? What if they wouldn't align no matter how passionately he argued? Suddenly the meeting swung into chaotic motion, as some engineers began discussing the feasibility amongst themselves. Max's heart raced as he recognized the impulse to bargain. A chance exists, perhaps, but was it a fleeting one? The energy of the room shifted, and uncertainty re-emerged, draping itself over the budding hope, a feeling an electric current surged through him. Max faced Derek with renewed determination. The moment we stop trying to innovate is the moment we fail as a team. I'm prepared to invest in this journey with all of you. So who stands with me? In that instant, he felt closer to realizing not just his vision, but his path forward as a leader. It was transformative in a way he hadn't anticipated. He wanted to evolve, to cultivate a culture of open discovery. But deeper within him swirled a dread. If this didn't pan out, would he have pushed his team toward another pitfall? The gaze of his colleagues hung upon him, the inquiry clear. One decision awaited to flip the narrative entirely. As he searched for assurance and encouragement in their faces, he realized this next step would define him, possibly shattering or illuminating his potential. Max steeled himself, knowing what lay ahead, a moment of trial, a risk that could either solidify his place among them or fracture everything he had fought for. Would he galvanize the room, or be ejected into the annals of forgotten attempts? The clock ticked, and the answers loomed just beyond reach, remaining tantalizingly out of grasp. The murmurs around the room escalated into distinct conversations, fracturing the collective attention of Max's colleagues. He sensed the room shifting gears, their minds tangentially exploring the implications of his ideas. There was a critical fork before him, rise to meet the moment or collapse under pressure. As the vibrations of uncertainty surged within, he clung tightly to his vision, now scrutinizing those potential allies, framing their arguments. Tara, edging closer, regained control of the conversation with her analytical data. If we approach this systematically, we could introduce smaller tests, maybe pilot a limited version with a select client base. She grabbed a marker, her enthusiasm palpable. We can lean into the data-heavy approach while also integrating Max's collaborative strategy. What do you think? Her gaze sought out nods, shining hope in a dim room. Max watched as her words hung in the air, becoming tethered between their confidence and Derek's skepticism. I'm on board, but we must consider the potential blowback if this doesn't go as planned, Derek interjected, punctuating the urgency of doubt. His stance remained firm. We risk our credibility. Max felt the familiar prickle of insecurity creeping back. He depainted over the doubts with a thick coat of hope, but Derek's words had peeled back that layer, exposing the raw nerves of fear. In that crucial moment, he understood something vital. Fixing the team's alignment would not come merely from words or even data, it would require empathy and trust-building tools he hadn't yet equipped himself with. Look, Max said, a softness creeping into his tone, I'm not asking you to leap into the unknown blindly. Every great success was birthed from an initial discomfort. I'm suggesting we face this discomfort together, with open lines of communication. If we fail, we can handle it collectively. If we succeed, we redefine what is possible for this team. As soon as he finished speaking, he locked eyes with Derek, whose stony mask had softened just slightly. In that flicker of understanding, Max realized he was not only seeking validation but expecting pivoting moments from each of them. They needed to confront their fears and unveil possibilities. The conversation pulsated and began to morph, a murmur of approval rippling through conversations. He felt a surge, warm and stimulating, igniting sparks of creativity within the group. They weren't just debating options, they were beginning to align their ambitions with his vision. Each member was once again a caged bird. Slowly, he could see them unfurl their wings. Max is right, Tara interjected again, fortifying what he had begun. Every project has hurdles. The agility we show is what will matter most. Let us establish checkpoints collaboratively. We'll know what works. Hearing the collective voices tentatively rallying behind him sent a surge of exhilaration coursing through Max. Yet among the echoes of agreement was an undercurrent of doubt he could not ignore. But collaboration might work, the thought shimmered with potential. But what if all this momentum slipped through their fingers the moment they received criticism from clients? He needed confidence validated through action, not just motivation. Time twisted as the conversation settled into abstract planning. Details and strategies flowed, ideas weaving together, slowly transforming nascent thoughts into concrete action plans. Max found himself enmeshed in their enthusiasm, thoughts racing ahead, daring to dream how this could elevate them. As laughter broke out, lighter moments breathed life into the technical discussions. Max allowed himself to relax for a moment, wrapping around the possibilities just unfolding. The coalescing energy felt contagious, each engineer bouncing off the other's suggestions and ideas, drawing closer to a collective vision. But in the heart of the frenzy he felt another pang of realization: this was fragile. No matter how aligned they appeared, the doubters still lurked, ready to pounce should failure rear its head. The stakes seemed to surge higher with every passing moment, a dark cloud shadowing the vibrant potential bursting forth. Then, as Derek's demeanor shifted toward a reluctant acceptance, nodding subtly, Max leaned in with determination. I propose we run a test session in 2 weeks. Enough time to strategize and prepare, and crucially, pivots will keep us aligned. After that session, we regroup and reassess. If we can't find harmony in our fundamental strategies, we always have time to adjust before the next step. Derek met his gaze with scrutiny, weighing the proposal carefully. Max could sense the flicker of agreement or resistance, tensing the air. A challenge still hung in the balance, and this was only the beginning. The warmth blossomed within, stemming from acknowledgement and connection. This was the start he fervently sought, but with each step forward, another shadow whispered doubt. Would the weight of their combined histories crush this fragile hope? All right, let's take that step, Derek said finally, subdued but willing. A ripple of relieved laughter followed, buoying their spirits. But as Max basked in the moment, his fears gnawed insistently. How long could this cohesion last? Would the doubts return to fracture their unity when the winds shifted? As the meeting drew to a close, he realized there was much more to confront than he anticipated. He hoped for alignment but steeled himself for resistance. Was he prepared to maintain the momentum once the naysayers returned, emboldened by his choices? The clock ticked, and the path stretched ahead, tangled with the winding road of uncertainty. Would he rise to the occasion or be undone by the very tide he sought to navigate? Max sat at his desk, the muted hum of the office swirling around him, yet feeling oddly distant. He replayed the meeting's final moments in his mind, a cacophony of voices blending with his pulse as he processed the cautious optimism where doubt had once reigned. Tara's enthusiasm and Derek's reluctant consent invigorated him, but the shadows of uncertainty cast long, and the weight of the challenge ahead pressed heavily on his shoulders. Confidence was a fragile construct. He felt it crackle through the air with each tentative agreement, yet memories of past failures loomed large. The question plagued him: how had he arrived at this crossroads, his team so close to a potential breakthrough while he remained on shaky ground? In his mind, it wasn't enough to inspire others with a vision, he needed to embody the very belief that propelled the project. The crumpled papers on his desk, dense with half-formed thoughts and ideas, beckoned for attention. He had to transform them into something tangible, weaving clarity into the chaos. Resolutely, he grabbed a fresh notepad and began drafting a clear action plan, determined to map out every detail meticulously. There was no time for doubt to infiltrate this phase. Ambition needed to be channeled into structure. As broader ideas bled onto the page, he noticed an underlying pattern. It wasn't just about the strategies or methodologies, but about empowering each engineer to feel ownership of their roles. He needed to find a way to connect their individual goals with the project's overall vision. Success thrived not on uniformity but on the diversity of thoughts and ideas birthed from a safe environment. He sensed Tara would be the first ally to strengthen this venture. Her analytical nature paired perfectly with her genuine passion. If he could harness that energy, it might galvanize the others. He initiated a shared online document for everyone to contribute anonymously, a move that circumvented the fear of judgment and allowed for free flow of ideas. The thought excited him: maybe together, they could innovate in ways he hadn't contemplated yet. Yet beneath the surface lay his internal struggle. What if his efforts fell flat? Despite his growing excitement, a gnawing worry lingered. Could he sustain this environment of trust long-term? Leadership felt like walking a tightrope, balancing encouragement with the heavy responsibility of potential failure. He didn't intend to lead them straight into a well of disappointment. 2 days passed, and the document began filling with contributions. Features guys wanted to test, strategies they felt might work. Max watched in awe as the team began to rally. Bursts of ideas battered his screen, igniting an electric charge in the air. However, with the flicker of excitement came a familiar companion: self-doubt. Each line contributed felt like a silent evaluation of his ability to lead. Was he equipped to transform this burgeoning chaos into directed action? Or was he merely setting them up for a fall? The questions gnawed at his focus as he met with Derek one-on-one. "There's a palpable shift," Derek admitted, a cautious encouragement threading through his voice. "But we've been in this position before." Max's enthusiasm can dwindle quickly when reality kicks in. "Exactly," Max replied, his voice firm. "That's why transparency is key. The moment we divert from open communication, we'll fracture. Everyone must stay invested, and I'm doing everything I can to ensure that." But even as he spoke with resolve, an unease settled deep within. Have I truly prepared myself for the backlash that will ensue should we stumble? The inquiry echoed like a loop, underscoring a level of pressure he hadn't anticipated. As the day drew to a close, Max sat alone in an expansive silence, fingers hovering over the keyboard, contemplating his next move. Each heartbeat echoed with an urgency to confront not only the looming tests ahead but his own capability as a leader. Would his next steps fortify the foundation they were building, or would they serve to unearth deeper fissures within? His team and himself, the days ahead loomed like uncharted territory, riddled with jagged edges of uncertainty. Max stiffened with resolve, knowing the time would soon come to present their plan to the higher-ups and face the scrutiny of their ideas. Clarity began to form within the chaos. He needed to transform his lingering uncertainty into a source of strength. "Perhaps this is the moment," he whispered to himself, the thought glimmering in the recesses of his mind. What if he could harness his vulnerabilities to connect with the team even further? Every moment of uncertainty could be transformed into a learning curve, an invitation to iterate and innovate. With a deep breath, he began drafting the critical presentation, fearing no judgment nor potential rejection, but as the words flowed onto the screen, another realization sparked within. Moments of vulnerability often reveal uncharted strength, and he was prepared to tap into that power. What he couldn't anticipate was the unforeseen response that would challenge his leadership, forcing him to navigate not just corporate dynamics, but his own sense of self-worth as well. Was he ready to embrace the long road ahead? Unbeknownst to him, the real test was yet to come, lurking just beyond the horizon. Max's heart raced as he prepared for the presentation. He had spent hours curating not just information, but a narrative, an authentic portrayal of their journey, imbued with vulnerability and the collective passion of his team. As the clock crept closer to the meeting time, he felt the familiar weight of anxiety tighten around his chest. The conference room, bathed in harsh fluorescent light, felt both suffocating and expectant. He wondered how individuals who spent most of their daily lives within these four walls could inspire innovation when the ethos of fear stifled their creativity. Yet here he was, about to reveal their ideas, not as a delegation to the higher-ups, but as a testament to collective effort and an embrace of personal adversity. When he entered the room, he was greeted by blank expressions, his colleagues' eyes flickering between him and their laptops. The air was thick with apprehension, hanging like an albatross around their necks. Max took a deep breath, resisting the urge to stall. He focused outward, determined to make this moment fruitful. "Thank you for being here. I feel it's important to highlight how we arrived at this point together," he began. As he spoke, he matched their nervous energy with sincere enthusiasm, weaving in anecdotes from the shared document, emphasizing contributions made by his team. The stories resonated real people behind the data, but as the presentation progressed, he saw Derek's skeptical gaze from the corner of his eye. A flicker of doubt danced through Max's mind. What if they misjudged the initiative? What if these ideas weren't strong enough? He forced himself to concentrate, silencing his internal critic. Leaders are not just navigators, they're also mirrors reflecting the strength of their teams, he said, gauging reactions. Every doubt and fear I feel, it is shared. And together, we can rise above them. I believe we can leverage our collective knowledge to innovate and succeed. A hesitant murmur arose from the audience, not quite encouragement but not dismissive either. He pressed on, his voice gaining momentum. As he articulated the team's strategy, piecing thoughts together into a coherent vision, he noticed Tara leaning forward, a spark of enthusiasm lighting her eyes. It fueled him, however, just as he felt himself gaining traction, the unexpected happened. The door swung open, and the head of the engineering department strode in, a shadow cast over the gathering. The room stiffened. "Max," she began, her tone blunt. "I hope you've prepared us for realistic outcomes. Last time we were promised breakthroughs, we were left holding empty promises. No more enthusiasm without results." Her words cut through him, a jagged knife wedging doubt deeper into his core. The feedback was fair, but it felt like a betrayal of their hard work. What had been a moment of unity laid bare before him was now challenged. Silence reigned, he needed to respond, yet words tangled in a web of fear. "Despite past setbacks, what I offer today is not merely a collection of hope," he asserted, finding strength in the conviction of his beliefs. "It's a chance to embrace the failures we've encountered and use them to propel us forward. Innovation isn't merely success, it's learning from each misstep." Max felt the eyes of his team on him, searching for a sense of assurance. If he faltered here, would they crumble under the weight of his indecision? With a firm resolve, he channeled the nervous energy surrounding him into clarity, aware that displaying vulnerability could spark a chain reaction of resilience among them. But just as he finished his point, he heard a faint voice from the back. "What if your nanny could help us?" It was an offhand comment, light-hearted yet somehow rattling the cage of their tension. Laughter broke the ice, cutting through the sternness of the moment. Behind that casual remark lurked an instinctual query: how often had they brushed off innovation from unexpected sources? As the laughter softened, a new idea took root in Max's mind. Could it be that their next breakthrough lay not only in the depths of algorithms and processes but also in their willingness to look beyond formal structures? The revelation simmered, calling out to the curious corners of his thoughts, urging him to push boundaries even further. "Perhaps," he ventured, a smile breaking through the earlier tension. "We need to be open not just to big ideas, but the everyday insights we often overlook. We need to involve everyone, not just in our teams but even those outside our immediate scope of expertise. The time had come to face the unorthodox paths leading to innovation. Max felt a glimmer of hope for something remarkable. What challenges might arise if they really did explore uncharted territories through an innovative lens? The potential was exhilarating, inflating a breath of fresh energy into the room. With newly ignited curiosity, he looked around at his team, determined to invite their suggestions for integrating unexpected ideas. If they could harvest inspiration from their lives outside the office, how much further could their project go? Max knew one thing: the work wasn't finished. They stood at the precipice of unlocking their true potential. And as the meeting unfolded, a sense of anticipation thrummed within him, compelling him into the next moment, pushing him toward the realization that obstacles weren't the end but rather gateways to new discoveries. What he didn't yet understand was that this approach would not merely redefine how they operated, it was poised to reshape his identity as a leader. Would he muster the courage to pursue this unconventional route? A challenge loomed ahead, with questions that lingered, igniting a new era of inquiry. Max could feel the urgency vibrate in the room as a newfound energy shimmered around him. He had opened a door, but would others step through with him? The laughter had broken the barrier of rigid expectation, but now he had to figure out how to maintain that momentum. Ideas began bouncing back and forth between him and his colleagues, each suggestion a small wave building towards something larger. The engineering lead's skepticism was a weight still pressing on his shoulders. He needed results. Max realized that while enthusiasm was uplifting, it had to be anchored in practicality. His commitment to inspire innovation had to align with a concrete strategy for execution. As they brainstormed, a striking revelation arose: it was essential to incorporate an unexpected diversity of thought. Tara shared a personal experience where her neighbor, a retired engineer, developed simple yet effective solutions for everyday problems. Why not include perspectives from outside our bubble? People often see things we can't, she proposed. Max nodded, exhilarated by the depth of her insight. It was a simple premise, but it struck at the heart of the innovation they sought. They could conduct informal sessions with people outside engineering, friends, family, even the local barista, anyone who might lend a fresh perspective. Those seemingly trivial encounters might hold seeds of ideas unmarked by the constraints of their day-to-day thinking. Let us set up an initial pilot, Max suggested, feeling more like a conductor than a solitary soloist. We can invite people to join a few brainstorming sessions and see what comes of it. We'll capture every idea, no matter how far-fetched. Creativity thrives in the unconventional. The buzz grew, and soon the room erupted with suggestions for venues and potential invitees. It was invigorating to witness them engage fully, shedding their previous hesitance. Still, doubt nipped at the edges of Max's mind. Could they manifest this fluid energy into something actionable? Can we transform this excitement into measurable results? He asked, needing to re-establish focus amid the chaos of burgeoning ideas. We must develop follow-ups and actionable plans to implement any viable suggestions that come out of these sessions. Amid the brainstorming, Max caught Derek's scrutinizing gaze again. The engineer was mulling over ideas but remained skeptical of their feasibility. Max felt the pressure to show commitment not only to innovation but also to a structured approach. How could he eliminate Derek's doubts? He realized that earning the team's trust meant creating tangible output from their sessions, something sturdy enough to withstand scrutiny. As the meeting wound down, Max encouraged everyone to document any further thoughts, assuring them they were building something significant together. Stepping outside the conference room, Max let out a slow breath, the weight briefly lifted. Yet all too soon, a swelling knot formed in his stomach. He had fostered hope, but uncertainty lingered. What if their efforts led nowhere? What if the outside voices were disruptive rather than enlightening? He felt the precariousness of their journey, questioning whether the pursuit of unorthodox ideas would ultimately pay off. His phone buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. An unexpected message awaited. It was an invitation from Tara, suggesting they meet with that retired engineer she mentioned. The prospect felt like a daring leap into the unknown, but was he prepared to take it? What other surprises could lie in store beyond their ordinary parameters? As he walked down the corridor, Max knew this was no ordinary quest. It had transformed into something personal. He had sparked a movement centered on change and adaptability within his team, but the path remained steep and winding. Would he guide them through these new territories, or would hesitation drag him back into habitual comforts? The moment dictated a choice. Suddenly, Max understood that to cultivate innovation, he needed to shift his approach as well, evolving beyond the confines of traditional leadership roles. How much was he willing to change? Embracing that uncertainty, he resolved to take the leap into the uncharted. What awaited them on the other side could redefine not just their project, but his very identity as a leader, and perhaps even reshape the corporate landscape surrounding him. The adventure was just beginning. Max paced the empty hallway, the cold fluorescent lights buzzing overhead adding to his sense of impending change. His mind raced, churning through the implications of Tara's suggestion. Would accepting help from an outsider dilute their professional integrity, or could it breathe new life into stale ideas? With every step, the internal battle intensified. He had always prided himself on his accomplishments, climbing through the ranks with a steady hand, adhering strictly to established protocols. Yet now, he felt a creeping realization that very adherence might be the barrier to true innovation. What had worked in the past could easily become a hindrance in a world that thrived on evolution. He pressed his palms against the cool wall, the friction grounding him. The evening sun streamed through the glass panels at the end of the corridor, casting long shadows that seemed to mirror his conflicting thoughts. The idea of bringing in an outsider could lead to ridicule among his established peers. Derek's skepticism came to mind, a relentless scrutiny that stung each time he met it. Is this worth risking my credibility? Max muttered under his breath. The question lingered, demanding an answer. Absorbed in contemplation, he reached the office doorway where Tara waited, a flicker of enthusiasm illuminating her face. "You're here!" she exclaimed, her excitement infectious. Yet in the pit of his stomach, a knot twisted tighter. He felt like he was standing at the edge of a precipice, staring down into uncharted waters. "Right. Let us go meet him," Max replied, voice steadier than his thoughts. The drive to the retired engineer's house was punctuated by the weight of silence. Tara filled the air with her steady stream of conversation, but Max couldn't focus on her words. Instead, he catalogued his responsibilities and the risks at stake. What if the ideas presented by an amateur, no less, turned out to be a distraction? When they arrived, a quaint house nestled between towering oaks greeted them, an inviting aura that contrasted sharply with Max's internal dread. The retired engineer, Mr. Wallace, stood at the door, greeting them with a firm handshake and a broad smile that somehow conveyed both warmth and judgment. "Come on in. I'm excited to chat about your project," he declared, gesturing toward his modest living room adorned with sketches and photographs of past inventions. Max stepped inside, hesitations colliding with the concepts forming in his mind. He was entering a space defined by creativity, an environment where practicalities often danced with imagination. As they settled into worn chairs, Mr. Wallace quickly shifted the focus to Max's project. With eagerness mixing with nerves, Max began to describe their engineering hurdles, the doubts looming like specters. Each word released a bit of tension, and as he spoke, Mr. Wallace listened intently, nodding along, the creases in his brow deepening with curiosity. "Have you considered the everyday usage of your design?" Mr. Wallace asked thoughtfully. The question hung in the air, inviting further reflection. Tara leaned in, eyes sparkling. "What do you mean?" "It's simple, really. People value solutions that fit seamlessly into their lives. Instead of overcomplicating with high-tech fixes, think about what might help them manage their daily tasks more effortlessly," he replied, his tone matter-of-fact but inspired. A pulse of energy raced through Max's veins. As the retired engineer spoke, it felt like unearthing a long-hidden treasure. They had been examining the problem from the inside out, weighing feasibility against technical constraints, but this perspective, the human aspect of their design, transformed his understanding entirely. Suddenly, Max was aware of the shift occurring within him. His doubts began to dissipate, fresh ideas bubbled up like spring water. He realized he was far more than a leader pushing for results, he was also a listener, a learner, a catalyst for change. This could redefine how he envisioned his role, yet as excitement filled the room, the familiar weight of doubt hovered, waiting to refocus his attention back to skepticism. The road ahead seemed rife with uncertainty, but for the first time, he felt empowered to step boldly into that uncertainty. Would he be able to weave together the insights of the unconventional with his responsibilities, or was he merely chasing fleeting shadows of inspiration? Max knew the time had come to face not just his project as challenges but also his own fears of inadequacy. What revelations lay in the dash between risk and reward, poised to reshape not just his work but his very identity? Max stood quietly at the front of the departing conference room, a palpable air of tension settling into place. The dialogue with Mr. Wallace had unleashed a torrent of inspiration, yet with it came a relentless wave of anxiety, a prospective avalanche he needed to steer clear of. Here lay the crossroads where he would either cement his identity as a leader or risk everything he had fought to build. In the days that followed, as he navigated the dual landscapes of encouragement and fear, Max began to stitch together his vision. He committed himself to truly integrate the lessons learned from Mr. Wallace into the operational fabric of his team. The concepts of simplicity and everyday applicability blossomed within him, transforming from hazy aspirations into a structured framework for innovation. He initiated weekly brainstorming sessions that included not only the engineers but also representatives from other departments. Max firmly believed that ideas from varied fields could breathe new life into stagnant discussions. The parameters expanded, they were no longer limited solely to mechanical functions and performance metrics, they were measuring relevance to human experience. Each contribution spun a thread in a tapestry of creativity and ingenuity, channeling their collective strength like an electric symphony. On the day of their first collaborative ideation session, Max stood before his colleagues, exuding a confidence that was once foreign to him. No longer merely the nervous challenger fighting for validation, he had become an advocate for shared creativity. Let us co-create solutions that not only push technical boundaries but resonate deeply with the end-user experience, he announced, feeling the thrill of possibility surge through him. What transpired next took Max widely by surprise. Engineers who had once been merely mere skeptics now actively participated as enthusiastic contributors. Conversations flowed crisply, and what lay previously dormant transformed into actionable insights. Ideas that were previously met with laughter now sparked invigorating debates. Max noticed Derek's skeptical demeanor shift gradually. There were nods in support, and eyes lit up with burgeoning curiosity. They honed in on critical elements missed in previous designs and began co-developing user-centric prototypes. They embraced iterations with each trial aiming to peel back complexities and create experiences that blended seamlessly into daily routines. Each minor success compounded into a robust tide, reinforcing the perseverance of their vision. Max had traversed immense distances not only professionally, but personally as well. The emerging acknowledgement among his peers felt less like redemption and more like recognition of growth. Just weeks earlier, he had felt a mere cog in a machine of prestige seekers. Now, his peers began to look to him for guidance, understanding, and leadership. He successfully orchestrated discussions probing deeper than superficial consensus. Max cast aside his fears of inadequacy by embracing the collaborative spirit that surrounded him. Eventually, the day arrived when they were to present their project to the executive team. In the mirror of the elevator, he adjusted his tie, his reflections signifying an emerging confidence shaped by authenticity and expertise. The prior sting of self-doubt felt like a distant memory. He recalled the meetings filled with skepticism, the moments when his confidence had wavered. But now, he was prepared. He carried forth the weight of newfound conviction. Standing in front of the executives, he articulated their shared journey, the exploration of ideas beyond the confines of their typical discussions, the transformation of skepticism into collaborative empowerment, the product of their dynamic teamwork. As he walked the executives through the project's multifaceted dimensions, revealing how simplicity and user engagement were no longer mere aspirations but central tenets, the room was charged with curiosity. Even Derek eventually acknowledged the achievement, his previously hardened shell cracking as he shared his admiration for the effort put into developing a user-driven approach. Max and his team concluded their presentation to resounding applause, marking a moment of professional validation. It was the affirmation that their efforts had borne tangible fruit, a promise of innovation now firmly rooted in practicality and relevance. As he stepped out into the sunlight, a wave of satisfaction washed over him. He no longer identified himself solely by the title of engineer but rather as a leader who had proven capable of navigating storms of uncertainty and sculpting pathways of growth. He had achieved much more than professional acknowledgement. He had unearthed a dedication to collaborative integrity, a fire ignited within him to foster an environment of open exploration. What had once felt insurmountable now served as the bedrock of his renewed vision. There was clarity now. He had successfully embraced his role as a conductor of creativity and innovation, harmonizing the talents of his colleagues into a movement that could transcend traditional boundaries. Of this final transformation solidified his commitment not only to his personal aspirations but to the strength of his team and projects that would follow. In acknowledging those connections, Max had established a resilient foundation for future successes. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support makes all the difference. Comment below your reactions and theories about Max's journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.